Hi, welcome to a brief overview of the Texas Success Initiative. This presentation was created by UNT coordinators Catherine Boyle and Candy Harris, and the graduate assistant Kalia Schuneman, and that's me. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns throughout this presentation, do not hesitate to email us. Our information will be found on the contact slide at the very end of the presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. This presentation will begin with an overview of the Texas Success Initiative, then we'll transition to the University of North Texas's process, including when we evaluate transcripts and how students are advised. Then we'll conclude by emphasizing some significant takeaway points from the overall presentation. Part 1 consists of just some general information about the state law, including its primary functions, exemptions from the law, and the TSI assessment itself. The Texas Success Initiative is a state law requiring all undergraduate students who enter a Texas public institution of higher education to either demonstrate their readiness for college level reading, writing, and math, or meet one of the following conditions for exemption that we're going to go over. So either they demonstrate through taking this assessment that they are ready for college level coursework, or they already meet a condition for exemption and do not have to take this assessment. There are two major functions of the Texas Success Initiative. First, it is used to assess the academic skill level of all undergraduate students in reading, writing, and math. So based upon the student's current skill level, TSI advisors will use these scores to determine if developmental coursework or some other academic interventions are appropriate for the student before they enroll in their college level coursework within each subject area. This slide details some of the most common conditions for exemption from the TSI. Be aware that these scores are good from 5 years from the date that they're taken. Also, pay attention to the bolded information in this chart. For example, if a student wants to be exempt in the TSI for reading, on their SAT, they need to have a composite score of 1070 as well as a critical reading or verbal score of 500. Also take note that for the STAR scores, we can only exempt students with a level 2 on English, 3, and level 2 on Algebra 2. So if students do not have these STAR scores or are not exempt from their ACT or SAT, then they most likely will have to test once they get to their university. This slide further details some of the most common conditions for exemption from the TSI. So students should keep in mind that their AP scores are not available until the end of the summer. So this could impact a TSI advisor's ability to evaluate a student's TSI status until late July. So this really could limit the amount of time a student has to register for their college courses. It is also important to note that dual credit is not listed on high school transcripts, so if a student would like to use dual credit to exempt them, they must submit their college or university transcripts to their advisors. If students do not have any of those exemptions that we just discussed, then they have to take the TSI assessment. This is a state-approved test that is used to determine their college readiness in reading, writing, and math. And it is on the computer. It is adaptive. You can take it an unlimited number of times, and also be aware of the time that it takes you to complete each section. So potentially, if a student has to test in all 3 areas, this could be a 6-hour test. So these are the minimum scores a student must earn on each subject area of the assessment in order to be deemed TSI complete in that area. An essay score of 4 and a multiple choice score of 363 will complete them, or an essay score of 5 will complete them regardless of what their multiple choice score is. These TSI scores must be submitted to advisors because they're often not listed on transcripts. So before they actually take this assessment, students need to do this short activity. It's just a brief assignment that they need to complete before they test. It's just to ensure that the students understand what the TSI is, why it's important. It'll also include some sample questions so that students know what to expect once they do test, as well as an explanation of the steps they may need to take if their scores do not meet the state mandated threshold. Here are some of the tips and suggestions for students to prepare ahead for the TSI assessment. The most important takeaway is that students should test as early as possible to ensure timely registration for their college courses. And many universities will include all of their testing information on their university websites. Okay, so now I'd like to go ahead and transition into the University of North Texas's specific process of how we evaluate transcripts and how we advise students. So this is the general process. Once the student is admitted and they have registered for orientation, we begin to look over all of the information needed to exempt them and all of their transcripts and relevant materials. So just be aware that these exemptions are not automatic, and we do have to process most of them ourselves. So information, especially STAR scores, is often missing. And like I said earlier, these AP score reports may not come until late July, and the dual credit transcripts need to be sent in separately. So we're going to look over all of the transcripts and score reports that the students give us to determine whether or not they are exempt from taking the TSI assessment. So all students who are not exempt before orientation need to test. We'll place a TSI hold on their account if they are not exempt until we get them to test. Once they test, if their scores do complete them in the TSI, then they're done with us. If their scores do not meet the state mandated threshold, they are going to be either advised into developmental coursework before going on to college level coursework, or if they, depending on their score, they may be allowed to enroll in college level coursework with some kind of intervention. For example, they may have a special lab that they need to attend, or special tutoring services that they'll need to attend in addition to their enrollment in that course. So once students have successfully completed any developmental coursework or college coursework with intervention, they are deemed TSI complete, and that is the end of their process. Okay, so the main takeaways for TSI are that this applies to all students. All undergraduate students who go to a public university in Texas are required to take the TSI unless they are exempt by the scores that we looked over. It's also important to note that this TSI status will most likely affect a student's ability to register for classes, meaning that if they have not tested in time, they may not be able to enroll as quickly as they would like to. If they haven't tested by the time they go to orientation, for example, they may have to test that day. It's also imperative that students test as early as possible, just so they don't get to that situation where they do have to test the day of orientation, when they're stressed and nervous about beginning a new experience at college. And that's all that we have for you. If you have any questions, you can reach out to TSI coordinators Catherine Boyle or Candy Harris, and their contact information is right here. You can also reach out to me. I'm the graduate assistant here at the Learning Center at the University of North Texas. Thank you so much for listening in on our presentation, and I hope you have a great day.